Have you ever dreamed of writing a novel? I don't even need to ask that because I know you have. Well, I have. We all have. That's why I am thrilled to welcome a new up-and-coming author to the Driven by It's4women podcast, who's here today to give us that little push that we might need to follow our dreams. Portadown woman Lucy McMullan has just landed her first publishing deal, and she has written Bells of Belfast. Now, her debut has been described as Sex and the City meets Bridget Jones. Lucy is not only an author, she's been writing since the age of 12, but she's been working since the age of 12 as well. She's a hugely successful entrepreneur and she's a social media influencer as well. Lucy, I've just finished reading your book and I have to say, I loved it.
Thank you.
It's quite different, but the first thing that I want to say about the book is the very first thing that it says at the very beginning of the book, the dedication. Okay, so it's the very first thing that you say. And it really touched me. Like it really, I don't know. Right. Okay. This is how it reads. Dedicated to every belle in Belfast and beyond. Live your life without shame and full of self-love. So what does that mean? Is that your inspiration for writing this novel?
100%. Yeah, completely. I think we need to, as women, have more self-love.
Yes.
And ignore the opinions of others. We know ourselves and you need to be true to yourself.
And do you find that in the past that you have lived with shame?
100%.
Right.
Yeah, without question.
Shamed maybe for your lifestyle. Now, let me just set the scene for this book. This is not a book about the Troubles, because I know most books from Northern Ireland. This is a book about girls who go out drinking after work. Well, it isn't just about that, obviously, but there's a lot of sort of quite choice language, kind of the language that us girls use whenever we get together. There's a lot of talk of sex, just spell that out, Yeah. There's a lot. So what inspired you to write this?
I think I wanted to write something that I was dying to read, but I couldn't find. Yes. And every story that I've seen about Belfast is Troubles based.
Yes.
And often quite sad as well.
Yes.
And I was dying to, put a mirror up to Belfast currently and the city centre, the metropolitan life and city single girl living.
Yes.
And this story of self-love as well that filters through the book.
Because, of course, at the age of only 26, you didn't grow up during the Troubles. Your Belfast is very different to my Belfast, to people watching and listening to this. Their Belfast will have been, Troubles. And then a lot of the other books out there, there's a lot of dramas and serial killers and stuff like that.
And I'm not trying to take away from that. Yes. I think they can both coexist. Yes. But it's the fact that this hasn't been done.
It really hasn't.
Yeah, I was dying to read it or dying to see it on TV. So I was like, right, I'm going to write it.
Like these girls are sitting in the Merchant Hotel drinking, they're quaffing champagne in the Observatory bar. It's the sort of glamorous side of Belfast. If you're from the country, you might go up for the weekend and have a few drinks up at the Europa, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So give us a brief outline of the plot without spoilers. So it's about these three girls.
Mm-hmm. It's mainly about the main character, Anna. Yes. So she is fresh out of a breakup. And feeling completely insecure, full of self-doubt, wondering why, like, what's wrong with me? Why did he not love me? And she starts this podcast called Bells of Belfast. And on this talks about all of her dating escapades. Yeah. Because her best friend, Olivia, who is known as Miss Sensuality, basically says, in order to get over someone, you should...
You can say it.
Get under someone. Which isn't always the best advice, but that's what Olivia gives. So she decides, I'm going to go and date and I'm going to explore.
Keep on moving, girls.
Yeah. Yes. Now, Grace, who's her other best friend, is Miss Sensibility. She would not agree with that advice. No. And she's more like, oh no, go on a man ban, like focus on yourself. So we just see Anna basically going through this journey of deciding who she is, what her value is, and how to live her life fully without shame and with confidence. So that's the story, and there's a bit of an enemies to lovers trope throughout it as well, which we quite like. So yeah, that's as much as I can without
spoiling the plot. Now, what was the writing process like for you? Did you just say, I'm going to write a book and sit down and do it? I often wonder, I am a frustrated writer. Of course I am, as are many people watching this, I'm sure. So how long did it take? Did you just sit down and write every day?
It took almost 4 years to finish the book. it was such a long process and much more intense than what I expected. I think I wrote the first draft and was like, oh, done. I sent it to my editor and she was like, this is great, but here's some suggestions.
Right.
And she loved it. But
Yes.
I did not realise that editors don't actually edit your book for you.
They give you
They give you
suggestions, and then you do the
you
rewrites.
you have to do everything.
Yes.
Whereas if I thought, oh, she'll just jazz it up a little bit, that doesn't happen at all. I was very naive, but I was like, what, 21 when I started it, so had no experience, didn't really know any authors at the time as well. And yeah, then I dove into the structural edit. You do your second draft, and then copy edits and bits like that. And the book that I have now is so different from that first draft.
Do you think it's better?
Oh, way better.
Do you like it better?
I love it. Yeah,
I do like it.
Oh,
Yes.
if I look at the first draft, I'm like, that is woeful. If I would have published that, it would have been.
And you weren't sort of hurt or stung by the criticisms?
Oh my gosh, no, not at all. Like, again, I went into this with such an open mind. Like, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I knew that I had a story that needed to be told.
Yes.
And it was so exciting whenever, you know, your editor comes back and goes, oh, I love this. Maybe if you change this, or
If we tweak it a little bit,
yeah.
it'll look better, it'll sound better.
and or just develop your characters.
Yes.
You know, I spent 12 weeks just fully focused on who are these characters.
Yes.
And when I did that, like the deep analysis, they told the story through me in a way.
Yes.
Rather than me having to go, oh, how would they react? I was just in a flow state of writing where it was like, oh, Anna would say this and Grace would say this. Like, it comes to you.
You got
quite
inside their
naturally.
heads. So it's quite intensive. And did you sit down each day and say, I'm going to do a couple of hours work on this? Were you disciplined?
Yeah, 100%.
Right, so you had to
I
be
think you have
disciplined.
to be. And I had sort of a ritual where if I put my headphones on and put on some like Hans Zimmer music, for example,
Yes.
I could just switch it on.
Yes.
But if I didn't have those headphones, I found it really hard.
Yes.
Like that was my like trigger, I
Yes.
feel like, to write.
So the discipline.
yeah.
What we need is a little bit of discipline here.
I think
ladies.
you need habits though to
Yes.
create the discipline.
Yes.
And for me, it was putting on those headphones or like sitting at the kitchen table and writing. And then I could just write for like 8 hours.
And it didn't feel like a chore.
No.
You enjoyed those characters.
Yeah. It was more than.
And which of the
anything.
characters did you like the most?
Ooh, that's a hard question. I love Paddy, who's Anna's best friend, is her workmate, because he's so funny.
Yes.
And I love his humour, and I did not realise I had that inside of me.
Yes.
He told the story through me.
Yes.
It's weird because all the characters feel like real people to me.
Yes.
And I love Anna, I think, for her honesty on her podcast of, you know, the emotions she's feeling, the things she's going through.
Yes.
Yeah.
So whenever you decided to set it here in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, where did you decide to, which bars did you decide to put it in? Why did you decide not to like go to Spain or somewhere? Or why here? Why Belfast? And which places?
Yeah, so whenever you think of Sex and the City, for
Yes.
example, you think of some iconic locations like the Plaza Hotel
Yeah.
or the Boathouse.
Yes.
You know, with every, I think, empowering female story, you can attach locations to that.
Yes.
When I think of Belfast, I think when in terms of TV or media or books, you think of old streets, I think,
Yes.
a lot of the time.
And yes, if you're not from Northern Ireland, you tend to think of Belfast as the old newsreels probably, and the terraced houses and with the tanks going up and down.
Like terrace
Yes,
brown
yes.
houses. And
Yes.
that's not the Belfast that I experience day to day.
No.
So I really wanted to spotlight the places that I love to go to, my friends love to go to, places that everyone loves to go to.
Yes.
So we have like Duke of York
Yes.
and that, you know, Cathedral Quarter. There's no better feeling when you're there on a Friday night.
Yes.
It's all lit up by those neon
Yes.
lights. You know, there's 7 types of rain in Belfast, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yes, of course. The famous sign that's across
Exactly.
the... Yes.
But that
it's great.
street, there's so much culture in that street. And I
So many
feel like,
adventures. We've all had an adventure there, haven't we?
exactly. And I think when the music's playing and people are dancing in the street
Yes.
and they're sitting on the red benches having, you know, a pint,
Yeah.
that's Belfast to me.
Yes.
And then you have the likes of the Merchant Hotel, which is just unbelievable. Like the most gorgeous 5-star hotel. You walk in and it's like Gatsby.
Yes,
It's
the glamour.
opulent, it's
The glamour.
glamorous. And the fact that we have this, but it's not spotlighted in any way.
It's not really. Yes, I'm just
really
trying to think.
not.
I mean, it's really not. I mean,
Yeah.
recently we've had Dairy Girls, which is set, of course, in a different city and it's set in a different time. Yeah, even whenever we had, we don't really show off the glamorous side of Northern
And
Ireland
then
at all.
The only sort of modern day story was Lovers, but it's got quite a bit of
Yeah.
it got quite a bit of hate because It
That
was
was
an
on
English
Sky,
man.
wasn't it? That was
Yeah.
on Sky. That was a drama. I don't know if any of you saw it. And it was about a lady who worked in a supermarket and she fell in love with a guy who was English and he ended up being a politician. Was that it? Was that the story? But yes, because she worked in a supermarket, she was very working class. So it was sort of set again round the back streets of Belfast. It's definitely worth a watch. But yes.
This story got quite a lot of hate because it was an Englishman coming to Belfast and being chased down alleyways.
Oh yes, we did have that. We did
There's
have
quite
that.
a lot of that.
It
And
was
he
a
goes
little
in-
bit cliched at
He
times.
goes
Yes.
into shops and he's being told to get out of the country, you know, which is not what we live.
No,
you know?
it doesn't really.
So I'm like, I get very frustrated with it because I really want to show the good of Belfast. You know, we're such a welcoming city.
Yes.
And you walk into the likes of Established Coffee, that's where the girls meet.
Yes.
You know, each morning for their sort of debrief of things that have happened before. And it's so friendly.
Yes.
And it's so modern. And, you know, we don't showcase, I feel like, the vibrancy that our city has.
And I wonder if that's like an age thing. You know, obviously I'm older than you. The city that you see is a different city, you know, that I grew up in. And we tended not to show off the sort of glamorous sides of the city. I mean, hotels have always been there, like the Europa have always been there. But you see a different city. You see, if I'm on TikTok, for instance, I'll see an English girl over and she'll be on a hen night. You know, she doesn't talk about the troubles.
That's the thing. And I think we need to appeal to that audience more as well as a city. You know, I had friends come over from America to stay with me for a week and they couldn't believe how gorgeous the city was.
Yes.
And they had this sort of built-in anticipation that there was going to be trouble.
That
when
they were
got
going to
here.
have an incident of some kind.
But we
that
were
just
going
never
to
happened.
Restaurants sitting in two taps, you know, and the sun was shining and it felt so like European and gorgeous, you know, and going into the National and having pizza in the beer garden and, you know, there's rugby on the screens, but everyone's happy and having a great time and every person they bumped into couldn't have been friendlier, but they were anticipating to come to Belfast and have trouble.
Yes.
So I'm like, why are we not showcasing all the amazing places? We couldn't choose to go where to go for brunch because there's so many places.
The positivity of young people. I like that because obviously you're young, being only 26. So yeah, the positivity of young people. It's nice to be able to see the city through your eyes.
Yeah.
And that's quite different. Yeah. Great. Now, let's turn to, okay, we're blushing now. Let's turn to the slightly sexier bits of the novel.
course.
Okay, brace yourself, everybody. There are some little scenes in this novel. I've always wondered, is that embarrassing to write? Is it awkward?
Only if other people make you feel that way.
Like I am right now.
Well, we shouldn't have shame, you know?
You're right, right, of course. Again, this is the age difference.
I definitely think we shouldn't have shame.
Yes.
I think the more that we can openly talk about it,
Yes.
the better. It makes your experience better. You know,
We're not good in Northern Ireland about talking about these
you
things,
should
are
feel
we?
empowered though.
We should.
Like-
Lucy, we should. But we just aren't good. Is it our culture in Northern Ireland? You know, this is quite a religious place on both sides of the community, and we have a tendency not to like to talk about the sex word. We just don't like it. We find it terribly uncomfortable. Am I blushing a little bit even mentioning? I think I might be. But again, that's my age. So it's something that I have to overcome.
Yeah.
And we'll overcome it together, ladies. And we'll be led by people like you who are very frank and very open about things like that.
Well, Belle's is really Anna's story, and she talks about the unapologetic pursuit of pleasure.
Yes.
You know, and living your life without shame.
Yes.
You know, I think there's a lot of societal expectations on women, and I really wanted to break free from that.
Yes.
In a lot of ways through the story and through her journey.
And we do live in a very conservative kind of society in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
So yes, we're breaking away from that with a sexier novel. Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with it's not really that raunchy. It's not that bad.
There's some wee bits.
Some wee bits.
Bit of spice.
Which of course then leads to the obvious question, how much of this is autobiographical?
It's not. I think, it's definitely fiction. The characters are completely fiction.
Yes.
I think some of the experiences and the emotions that Anna goes through, I've definitely have poured out from things that I've been through.
Yes.
And definitely my own self-love journey.
Yes.
You know, when I was younger, relying on the validation of men.
Yes.
And now it's like I fill my own cup. I don't need that. You know, there can be an accessory on top of that, essentially.
I like that. I like that.
You know, and also viewing red flags. You know, if you squint, they can turn pink, and pink's a nice colour. So we can just leave the red flags. But now I'm like, if I see a red flag, I'm out. you know.
I love young people. I love the way they have that. I love the way they have their lives sorted. Yeah. I have quite a few red flags the whole time. I just ignore them. I do. Yeah, it must be another thing.
That isn't good for us.
No, of course it's not.
That is diminishing our self-worth. So,
I know.
We just would view it as that.
So have you inadvertently shared the stories of some of your friends, do you think? You know, things that they've told you, have you sort of like slightly changed them?
There's one little extract that I was told where a friend of mine went on a first date, and the man wouldn't tell her his career. And she was like, what is your career?
Was his
And she went, no, wait. Went on another date, another date. And then he goes, I'm in the last stages of becoming a priest. So
right.
we need to sleep together before I become a priest.
And I think your friend has just won the worst dating story contest. That has to go down.
So I know that little extract is in the book told.
And it's true.
You know, and it's true.
Because dating's hard.
Yeah. And that was in Belfast.
That was in Belfast. Yeah. Now, we're not going to name and shame this man. Although, you know.
Who knows if he actually was a priest? Maybe
we'll never know. We'll never know. Did he ever become a priest? Because we all have these awful stories of dating.
Yeah.
I mean, we really do. No matter what age you are, if you're on the dating scene, and I have news for you, Lucy, it doesn't get any better. I'm in my 50s now. No, it doesn't get any better. It's just the same. So obviously your friends have shared their stories. And have you had any really bad dating experiences?
Oh, God.
There's probably so many that you can't even single out one.
Oh, so many. God, I'm afraid. I had a man that I was dating that, you know, would take me out on big flashy dinners, and he was so lovely and would always surprise me and with constant communication. And then I found out like a month into it that he'd been lying to me the whole time and was stealing money. Was going to jail, and he was homeless.
Oh, well, that's impressive.
And I'm not one to judge, but when you're stealing from lots and lots of people,
my jaw's just fallen open. I like that. So he was stealing money.
Yeah.
And was he in and out of jail?
Yeah.
Just as a place to live.
And
Wonderful.
then basically phoned me from jail to be like
beep 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 beep.
I just wanted to let you know that I'm in jail.
And what did you say?
I couldn't really say anything, to be honest with you. I didn't really know what to say.
No notion of this. No. See, I don't think men understand what women go through. They really don't understand.
That's extreme, though. That's the worst.
It's not that extreme. Now, it's not that extreme because nearly every woman you speak to will have had a relationship at some point with some man, and it always turns out that they're married or have a secret family.
I have the worst one last year. I was in a relationship with someone and seeing him every single day.
Yes.
Everyone thought we were like fully in love together, and he had a girlfriend in a different country for 7 years.
7 years.
She took him back.
Of course she did.
Yeah.
Of course she did.
So.
Because, of course, you don't know what he told her.
Of course. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. But she messaged me, and then we found out there was like 20 other girls.
20. Lovely. Yeah. So I think we all have stories like that. Yeah. That's why books like this are so important, because they help you to understand you're not alone.
Yeah.
This is quite normal. The dating scene, whatever age you are, wherever you're living, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad out there.
That's why we need self-love and friendship.
Yes, friendship is probably more important than ever, which is why it's nice to see this book centred around the three girls who have each other's backs, who are always there for you and who are never going to be shocked and are never going to judge you.
Mm-hmm. I think it's, this book is about love in all forms.
Yes.
Family, friendship and relationships and self-love as well.
Yes.
And I think you need all of those.
To navigate life, even just to navigate your way through life. Yeah. Goodness me. So is there a sequel coming? There probably is, but when we could do a sequel just on the priest story.
Yeah, I know.
You're now thinking like,
we have to see how people react to the first one, but so far so good. So hopefully so.
Yes, it sort of, whenever I read it, I immediately thought this would make a great Netflix series. That's sort of what I thought. Who would you like to be in your cast? Who would be your ideal cast?
That's an interesting question.
I think we'd have to have Paul Mescal in there at some point.
Yeah, Paul Mescal was in my mind for James.
He can do a northern voice, can't he?
If you know the character of James.
Yes.
He's Mr. I don't know if I can swear on the podcast. Probably not.
No. Let's not swear.
Or other.
Oh, okay.
And I think Paul Mescal would be a good.
Yes, a good starting. A good starting.
I'd love to cast local. I'd love to find local girls that are sort of
Like new talent. New glamorous
Yeah,
talent.
and the Belfast accent's so hard to do, so
I
think bringing in an American to try and do a Belfast accent.
Yeah, although we could get Barry Keoghan and Sabrina Carpenter.
Yeah. And Sabrina would be a good Olivia.
Yeah. Everybody's
Have to have Jamie Dornan somewhere. Mr. Millionaire.
He's a bit old now.
Oh, well, he's an older character though.
Well then, yeah, we could get him.
The whole thing.
It's great. We'll just cast this out. Yes, and it would be lovely if it was just Northern Irish people.
Yeah. Be fantastic.
So we wouldn't have to listen to any woeful accents that we normally
exactly.
have to do.
Everyone is going to be hyper-analysing the accents.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm very curious about is whenever you get a book, right, so do you write the book first or do you get the publisher first? What way does it work?
Usually you would write sort of a brief synopsis first and send to a literary agent who would then sell it to different publishers, and whoever's the highest bidder would.
How many knockbacks do you get?
Oh, you always get knockbacks. I got quite lucky with mine because I had been ghostwriting before.
Right, yes. And who had you been ghostwriting for?
I cannot.
Oh, you can't tell me. Oh, do you do?
I'm a ghost.
Yes, you're a ghost. Now, I've done this too. I've ghostwritten a book for a celebrity. It's not that well paid, really, is it?
No.
It's surprisingly badly paid. People don't do it as a career.
Mine was a legacy novel for someone. So I was ghostwriting, and that's how I met my publisher. And she loved my writing.
So you had an in.
Yeah, she loved my writing and asked me had I considered writing anything of my own. And I said, I have this concept for a TV series, and I've fleshed it out for TV.
Yes.
But we were in lockdown, and I had a director and everything, but then everything sort of collapsed with lockdown.
Of course.
And then I just decided to write it as a book, and I wrote the first chapter basically for her, and she offered me the publishing deal. And I just dove in and wrote the story, and 4 years later, here we are.
Now, obviously, if lockdown hadn't come in, it probably would have been a quicker process, maybe, would it?
For TV, yes.
Yeah.
But that sort of put a halt to everything. And yeah, I think lockdown is the reason I wrote the book in a way, because I was living for the first time on my own in a city centre apartment in St Anne's Square. Yeah. And I wanted to live my single city girl life, but I couldn't.
Yes, of course.
That's whenever I looked for books or TV shows to show me that in Belfast, to sort of get a little bit of it.
And discovered there was nothing.
So I wrote
absolutely nothing. Yeah. And can you make a living writing novels?
You can.
Can you?
Yeah. So it depends on, for example, certain publishers could offer you a 6-figure deal to write your next book. Yeah. Or you could sell the rights for TV. Per book, you don't make a lot.
No.
But if you sell a lot of books, you can make a lot.
So you're now at the stage, are you looking to sort of sell this on as a show, as a TV show? Or?
I'd love to see it on screen, 100%. We'll just have to see what happens.
It's very exciting, isn't it? Yeah. You're sort of in the infancy of this, because this is quite a new career for you, because you've been working for a very long time. Now, somebody was telling me that you've been working since you were like 12 or something crazy like that. Yeah. What were you doing at 12?
A local production studio.
Right.
I was working for them, so that was sort of my first in. Well, I loved telling stories. Right. I loved making videos, so I would edit videos and post on YouTube, and they did quite well. So I reached out to a local production studio, BNL Productions they're called.
Shout out to them. Okay. Yes.
And I was 12, and I was like, look, I'd love some work experience over summer. Right. And they said, come down, and I went down and talked my way in, and I spent days organising cables and doing things like that, and then eventually was editing music videos and wedding videos for people.
Right.
And I was meeting clients from 12 years old. And it's crazy. So
that's very strange. And then you were on social media yourself from that age.
Yeah.
What were your main forums?
YouTube was sort of the main, so I would make YouTube videos.
And were you able to make money from that?
No,
not then.
Just for fun.
Just for fun. And what did your parents think?
They were fully supportive, I think they reviewed everything, obviously, before it was posted.
Right.
And were right beside me, holding my hand. But I think they saw that I had the passion for it. And,
yes.
I've made hundreds of videos, and only 10 of them would have made it online, for example.
And what were your videos about?
My earliest one I remember was I went on a school trip to Venice.
Right.
So I did a big cultural video of exploring Venice and the bits and pieces, and talk through it. And
interesting.
And then I made an anti-bullying video as well. That went viral on social media, but those are sort of the earliest ones that I remember, but so long ago I can barely, and a lot of them are archived and on private.
Yes.
But yeah, and music videos, things like that. I would invite people around to my house and we would stage a music video.
interview them and do.
Yeah, I remember blowing up like 1,000 balloons in my living room, and everyone was popping out from the balloons for this music video, like such random things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about social media these days and the influence of social media? Do you think it's good, bad?
I think you are what you consume. So
Yes.
if you're looking for the negative,
Yes.
you're going to become negative.
Yes.
You know, it's like this in life. But if you're
Yes.
trying to consume influential, impactful, or positive content,
Yes.
that's who you're going to become. But the algorithm will work to you as well.
Yes.
So if you're finding a negative video and you're liking that and you're saving that and you're sharing that, you're going to get fed more negative content.
Yes, of course.
You know, it's attraction. But if you're looking at positive and you're sharing that, that's what you're going to get. So I think we need to be responsible for our own habits when it comes to social media and the content we're consuming. And I think the older generation as well look at it as quite a negative thing.
They tend to.
Yeah.
They're a little bit suspicious of it because
Yeah.
unlike you, who was 12 whenever you started, this is kind of a new thing to them and they don't really get it. A lot of older people don't get it. And I can see why. And then, of course, it's the trolling, the social media trolling. What do you think of that?
Everyone is going to have an opinion of you, whether they know you or not. So you may as well be yourself.
Yes.
And I think if you're like looking up, I know there's sites and stuff, if you're constantly looking up those sites and reading what people say or going into your messages and reading the DMs and replying to them, you're feeding it. And I think I prefer to feel like it doesn't exist.
So you don't look?
No, I don't look.
You don't look at all?
No. I it disgusts me a little bit but I also feel super sorry for the people that do that because they must have a lot of lack of satisfaction in their own lives.
They are a bit odd, aren't they?
Yeah, but I'm like, if you're happy and you're living your life and you're satisfied, you're not going to think, oh, I'm going to go troll this person online.
And we're back to the concept that you talked at the beginning of shaming. When somebody wrote below one of my videos the other day, I laughed because it was true actually. They wrote, if you were chocolate, you would eat yourself. And I'm like, pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. I actually messaged back and went, you know, your default setting might be self-loathing. Mine's not, and it's taken a while to get there, but it's not self-loathing, and I don't know why you want me to not like myself.
But it's psychology, isn't it?
Weird, isn't it?
You know, it's totally psychology, and for me, I prefer not to look at it because I think, again,
I find it funny.
but the more you look at
I
it,
find it amusing. I don't know why I have a funny sense of humour.
I don't know, because like sometimes I think even your subconscious start to believe that. But I just prefer, I'm not going to look at it. I know who I am and I know my mission and I know my goal.
Yes.
And you can be misunderstood sometimes, but I'm okay with being misunderstood.
Yeah.
You know, I'm okay with that because I know where I'm going to be.
Yes.
You know, eventually. I know what I'm aiming for.
And obviously you're a social media expert of sorts too. So if there's any parents listening to this and their children are being trolled, what would be the advice? What advice would you give to them to protect them? Mine would generally be sort of to get them off it for a while, you know, to take a bit of a break from it, maybe ignore it. But it is hard.
I think in the beginning, you can sometimes look at the comments and try to understand why someone would say that.
Yes.
And then, is it relevant to me?
Yes.
You know, and most of the time it's not.
Yes, most of the time it's not.
You know, most of the time it's fueled by hatred or insecurity on their part.
Yes.
Like you say, like self-loathing.
Yes.
That it's a reflection of how they feel about themselves often.
Yes, it is. Yes, this is shaming. There's a lot of shaming about.
And I think it's about being emotionally intelligent, you know, and the more you can kind of empower your child to be that way. There's lots of books and, you know, resources that you can find to empower them to feel good about themselves. And as well, once you have that unbreakable self-love, nothing's going to get in that. And I remember as a child, my mum would give me this sort of logic that you have a bubble around you, right? So imagine this bubble all around your body. Someone's throwing something at it. It just bounces off. So if someone's throwing their opinion at you, let it bounce off. And I know it's harder said than done, but I think the more you meditate and sort of imagine that.
Resilience.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
The
good
easier
to
it
try
becomes.
and make your children become a little bit more resilient. So you've made a career out of social media. And you handle accounts for other people, don't you?
I do.
Do you handle accounts for famous people who I'm sure you can't mention? Are you allowed to mention them? No. Stop it. Isn't this awful? It's so secret. Don't worry, if you message me, I'll tell you. No. Yeah, so you actually this is quite an interesting thing too. And again, on the topic of everything is not sort of how it seems on social media. So you actually do the accounts for this. Like, there's one famous girl I know that you do her account. So that's you, not her.
Yeah.
Does she give you the ideas?
No, they'll always have impact.
Yes.
So it'll be more like I would go on a trip and do like bulk content creation.
Yes.
And then we would schedule posts and figure if it's brand deals, we'd work on the concept for a brand deal and how we're going to represent that brand and promote if it's a product, for example, just to make it as authentic as possible to that person. And I think it's really good, especially for celebrities or big influencers, to have that.
You're an expert, obviously.
Yeah, but to make it real and to make it relevant, I think a lot of influencers just take whatever brand deal they can and post, you know, holding up a product like, I love this so much, and don't think about, you know, how's this relevant to your audience?
Yes.
Why do you love it?
Why do you love it? Yeah,
You know?
So you can be there as the voice of reason.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you look at some people's social media and think, what are you doing?
Yeah, I try not to judge. But yeah, there's some people in Northern Ireland, I think, that are all about promoting products and less about storytelling.
Yes, there's a lot of, yes, I think everyone gets really annoyed at that too, the constant promoting of, you know, buy this fake tan, no, buy this one, you know.
And jumping from brand to brand is a massive thing.
Yeah.
And I really just...
This is the best skincare in the entire world, apart from the one that I'm going to promote next week. Yes,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
everybody, and that confuses the older people too.
Yeah.
And they're like, what am I watching? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it creates a lot of doubt as well when you're following a lot of influencers. And I understand why a lot of people dislike that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think my sort of aim is storytelling more
Yes.
than influencing.
Yes.
And that's what we go for first with any of sort of the clients.
This has been interesting because I know a lot of our listeners will be a little bit older and they're a little bit confused whenever we talk about the world of influencing and the world of social media. So
I mean, I find it an ick, the word itself. Whenever people say I'm an influencer, I'm like, oh no, please no.
No.
Because I think the overall perception of influencing is...
it's either
selling
negative
products.
or what on earth do you do? Yes. And if and as older people, but I mean older people, I mean people my age and older, like in their 50s, and they just go, what is that they're doing? And they don't see it as a proper career, but of course it is a proper career these days. Maybe we'll be going to university to do degrees on...
Well, there are some colleges that in universities.
So we can go to university and do
courses for
that.
it.
Would you recommend that?
No.
No. Okay, there you go. No, don't do it. Learn on the job. So what about plans for you for the future?
I have another book that's separate to Bells that is in the works, but it could take me 4 years, so I'm not even going to mention the name of it.
Yes, yes.
And I would love to go into TV as well. So yeah.
And if there's a budding author who's sitting there with a dusty manuscript, what's your words of advice to them?
You have a lot of pressure on yourself to finish this book, and a lot of thoughts of like, oh, what are people going to think? You know, you sort of are filled with self-doubt in a way.
Yes.
For me, I had to meditate a lot and write the book in my head before I hit paper.
Yes.
And, you know, you don't always have to be pen to paper writing. No. You can be imagining it.
Right.
You know, you can be going to bed at night being like, okay, what would that character say? And,
you
know, daydreaming essentially a lot. And then it makes it a lot easier to write. And creating that habit, like for me, putting the headphones on, putting Hans Zimmer on and sitting writing.
Yes.
But if you do a little bit every day, you know, that creates a lot. I think not letting the pressure get to you is definitely a big thing.
Those are very wise words. And finally, as this is the Driven podcast, what drives you?
What drives me? Probably my younger self.
Yes.
For sure. This book in particular as well is, I wish I would have read it when I was younger.
Yes.
So I can't wait for a young woman to read this and to have so much more self-love.
Yes.
And not make mistakes.
I guess we all make mistakes, but I look at you now and I see this confident, wise young woman.
Yeah.
But yet you're telling me that the younger Lucy maybe wasn't like that.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
You know, and I make mistakes all the time, but I think in choosing who you surround yourself with and in choosing a partner.
Yes. Or not.
But that impacts who you are as a person. You are the people you spend the most time around.
Yes.
And you adapt the habits of others. And I wish I would have been more thoughtful.
Yes.
In a way. Especially with the partners that I was choosing and how I felt about myself, how I viewed myself as well.
Yes.
You know, if I would have known what I know now, then can I imagine what I could have done?
Classic, isn't it? It's the classic conundrum, isn't it?
That's why I wrote it in Bells, because I want a young girl to pick up this book and read it and be like, oh, when I see a red flag, it's a red flag.
Yes.
You know, and how a man feels about me is not how I feel about myself.
No.
You know.
So where do we get our hands on this book, The Bells of Belfast?
It's available worldwide on Amazon And
Yes.
then it's available at Waterstones, WH Smith, and some local bookstores as well.
Fantastic.
And then Barnes & Noble in America. KMD
In America
Bookstore
as
in
well.
Australia. Yeah.
They're going to know all about us and our drinking habits in America.
Yeah,
now.
it's doing quite well, so hopefully so.
Brilliant. And do you have a website? Do you have social media?
Yeah, it's bells@belfast.com. You can get the book directly from there. And we have this merchandise as well for the book. And we have a line of
Merchandise.
self-love t-shirts, things like that.
Oh my goodness, you're sitting wearing one. The Self-Love Club. Lucy, it's been absolutely lovely talking to you. It's been quite an eye-opener too. You are a very wise young woman, and it's lovely to see Belfast through your eyes, and it's lovely to hear the world of dating through your eyes. So, and really for people of any age, I think this would be really a worthwhile read. So thank you, Lucy McMullan, for coming along and sharing your story with us here on the Driven by It's4Women podcast. And that's all we have for another episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
If you've liked this episode, please subscribe, and we'll be back really soon with another great story. Thank you.